tend to hold back with his briefings so as to allow him to do more engagements with the public and yourselves. So let me start with this working visit to Zimbabwe that the President undertook on Sunday. He undertook a working visit to the Republic of Zimbabwe at the invitation of His Excellency President Emmerson Mnangagwa. The visit was an opportunity for both heads of state to engage over a wide range of issues of mutual and bilateral interest. South Africa and Zimbabwe maintain a deeply historical relationship of bonds that were formed during their respective struggles against colonialism and apartheid. The two countries further enjoy a political and a dynamic trade relationship. As an example, in 2025, exports from South Africa totaled about 4.30 billion US dollars, with agricultural products and machinery dominating most of the traded goods. Both presidents agreed to retreat to President Mnangagwa's farm, where they will engage in a relaxed environment and outside of the constraints of presidential formality and protocol. Over and above the planned meeting, the President was interested in learning how President Mnangagwa is assisting local farmers in the area that neighbor his farm. As the Presidency, we've noted with concern the reports that have since surfaced following this visit by the President to Zimbabwe, identifying an individual who is a person of interest to our law enforcement, who was also present during the visit. President Ramaphosa had no prior knowledge of who will be present during the visit, nor was he familiar with the said individual. The President flew to Zimbabwe for a meeting with his counterpart and nothing else. The President will further encourage our law enforcement agencies to continue with pursuing the matters that are under investigation involving these individuals or individual, and to do so with no fear or any form of hesitation. And just an update on the Water Crisis Committee, which the President announced its establishment to provide coordinated national leadership in addressing the water crisis. The committee is chaired by the President, and it incorporates the existing Interministerial Committee on Water, also known as the Water Task Team, and it includes the following departments: the Department of Water and Sanitation, the National Treasury, the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, the Department of Human Settlements, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, as well as the South African Police Service. At a technical level, the National Water Crisis Committee is chaired by the Director General in the Presidency, Ms. Pindile Baleni, who is supported by a secretariat comprising of a joint team from Operation Vulindlela and the Department of Water and Sanitation. The key task of Watercom is to oversee the implementation of the National Water Action Plan, which outlines urgent actions to address water supply disruptions in several parts of the country, as well as to accelerate the implementation of institutional reforms across all levels of government. The National Water Action Plan is focused on 5 interventions, namely water service delivery, overseeing targeted interventions to address water supply disruptions in prioritized areas, institutional and financing reforms, coordinating reforms to the system of water service delivery at local government level, unlocking water infrastructure investments and mobilizing private investment, legal and regulatory mechanism to improve service delivery, And the fifth one is addressing corruption and criminality in the water sector, including corruption associated with the use of water tankers. To date, the National Water Action Plan, which at some point will be presented to the public, has been presented and discussed with provincial and local government structures. This includes premiers and mayors. There was a recent engagement between the president and mayors. Further engagements will be held with business, labor, and civil society to ensure a collaborative approach across all levels of government, as well as with social partners. A process is underway to establish an advisory group of water experts from universities and other bodies that will provide input on the plan and its implementation. Just to quickly run through the public program for the next week or so, starting tomorrow on Thursday, the 7th of May, the President will take a tour at the South 32 Hillside Aluminium, which will mark the 30th anniversary celebration of the company's operations in Richards Bay in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Hillside Aluminium was part of an ambitious vision by South Africa's new democratic government on the role additional industrial capacity could have in creating jobs, bolstering international trade, and contributing to local downstream beneficiation. The Hillside Aluminium Smelter is the largest in the Southern Hemisphere and the only producer in South Africa, largely producing high-quality primary aluminium for domestic and export markets. Through the aluminium value chain, the company provides the foundation for an estimated 29,000 jobs across our economy. In the last 10 years, South 32 has contributed about 35 billion rands to South Africa's gross domestic product. On Tuesday, the 12th of May, the President will head back to the province of KwaZulu-Natal, this time around to officially open and address Africa's Travel Indaba at the Inkosi Albert Luthuli International Convention Center in Durban. The Indaba is a platform for leaders of the African tourism industry, investors, media, international tour operators, bookers, and government leaders whose mandate is to grow and develop tourism on our continent. The Indaba provides an opportunity for buyers from around the world to purchase a variety of tourism products available in South Africa and across the African continent. Africa's biggest tourism trade gathering also allows industry leaders to deliberate on new policies, emerging trends and opportunities and threats facing the tourism sector from both African and global perspectives. And tourism, as you all know, is a critical driver of investment and job creation throughout our country, as well as for the eThekwini municipality and the province of KwaZulu-Natal that will be hosting the Indaba. It will run from the 12th to the 14th of May. Then on Wednesday, the President will be back here in Cape Town to address the opening of the BlackRock Infrastructure Investment Conference, where he will be engaging with global investors. The conference forms part of government's ongoing efforts to strengthen investor relations following the 6th South Africa Investment Conference held on the 31st of March, which mobilized a substantial investment commitments and underscored the country's focus on infrastructure-led growth. Discussions at the conference will center on critical sectors including energy infrastructure, transport, port and rail systems, digital and data infrastructure, as well as water infrastructure. Just a note that this conference is not open to the media. However, the President's address will be streamed live on our digital platforms, so you'll be able to follow it. Then on the 14th, on Thursday, the President will be responding to oral replies or to questions for oral replies by members of the National Assembly. As you know, this is one of the mechanisms that Parliament uses to hold the executive to account. The session will cover, amongst other issues, the skills development amongst the youth, benefits of various investment conferences in boosting employment opportunities in the country, the rollout plan of Operation Prosper, as well as government's plans to address student debt. On Tuesday, the 19th of May, the President, as the grand patron of the National Orders, will bestow the 2024 National Orders Awards, also the 2025, because we didn't have them in 2024, on distinguished citizens and eminent foreign nationals who have contributed towards the advancement of democracy and have made a significant impact on improving the lives of South Africans. The National Orders are the highest award that a country, through its president, bestows on its citizens, as well as eminent foreign nationals. The Director General in the Presidency, who is also the Chancellor of the National Orders, Ms. Pindile Baleni, will in due course announce the recipients of the National Orders. The President will bestow on deserving recipients the Order of Mendi for Bravery, the Order of Ikamanga, the Order of the Baobab, the Order of Lutuli, the Order of Mapungubwe, and the Order of Companions of O.R. Tambo. And then I think lastly, on Wednesday, the 20th, the President will travel to Botswana for the South Africa-Botswana Binational Commission, which is a high-level framework that is co-chaired by both heads of state. Its purpose is really to strengthen bilateral cooperation between the two countries on various issues such as trade, security, energy, as well as infrastructure. At a strategic level, the BNC focuses on reinforcing ties in areas such as agriculture, health, education, transport, and mining. South Africa remains a key major trading partner with our neighbors, Botswana. The fifth session of the BNC that was held in 2022 discussed addressing trade barriers and strengthening industrialization, with the key focus that will include this time around major projects between the two countries, as well as cooperation on security issues, including cross-border crimes. Closer to the time, we will announce the list of ministers that will be accompanying the President. Okay, that's the public program. I'm happy to take questions. isiZulu, isiXhosa, isiSotho, in Venda, in Afrikaans. Paul, I'll start with you.
Good day, Vincent. Paul Beckert from Bloomberg. Hope you don't mind in English.
Sure.
Most of our English. The anti-immigrant protests that we've seen in a way and it's caused a bit of tension with some of our fellow African countries, especially Nigeria, Cameroon, and the President also met his Mozambican counterpart recently. Could you give us some insight about what they talked about? And not just saying that it's un-South African, as the Justice Minister said, but also have they promised any protection for members of those communities or anything like that? Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. The matter was discussed yesterday between President Chapo and President Ramaphosa, and they both agreed that, number one, South Africa is not xenophobic. South Africans are not xenophobic. What you have are pockets of protest, which is permissible within our constitutional framework. You also have the reality that the issue of immigration is a pressure point, not only here in South Africa, but throughout the world, where protests are held on these issues. What is important from our perspective is obviously respecting the rights of everybody that is within our borders, and to, when we protest, to do so peacefully without causing harm to anybody. And in this regard, the President expects law enforcement to also play its role to prevent any acts of violence against any individual. Yesterday, both President Chapo and President Ramaphosa also agreed that the continent needs to work together to address the issues that are behind these levels of migration that we see across our continent. Issues of conflicts, issues of instability, and in some areas, if we're being honest, the misgovernance that causes people to migrate in large numbers and seek refuge in different parts of the continent, including South Africa. And so the condemnations that we've had coming from the different quarters on the continent should not just end in condemnations, but there should also be willingness to constructively engage on what are these issues and factors behind people seeking to leave their countries of birth and seeking refuge elsewhere. So they both agreed that there has to be that genuine, open and frank conversation across the continent. But the President did emphasize that South Africa is a welcoming country. South Africans are open, friendly and warm people, and we will reject any notion that seeks to characterize this country or its people as being xenophobic. In fact, any characterization of this protest that seeks to portray South Africans as xenophobic is actually lazy sort of analysis of the real issues that are at play here. There are genuine concerns that communities have with respect to crime, crimes that are committed by foreign nationals, where the President expects law enforcement, again, to act without any fear or favor, and also to say to those who are visitors in our country, they must respect and conform with our laws. If they break the law, they will face the full might of the law. Like all of us are expected to respect the law. Yes, my brother.
Hi, Vincent from Independent Media. Just to start, you did touch on the Zimbabwe matter. Just for further elaboration, do you not feel that some of this matters maybe not necessarily a slap in the face, but it does leave a bitter taste in the when it comes to South Africa's rule of law when the President is spotted with a wanted man, especially by several law enforcement agencies. Secondly, has the President been briefed by some of his ministers who are facing public scrutiny, such as Gaty McKenzie, Sisi Tolashe, and recently Sodi Malatsi and Sibiwe Barube? Is he concerned about some of the issues that they face themselves being scrutinized for? And then lastly, we also know that the Phala judgment is coming on Friday. Do you have any comment on that? Thank you.
Let me start with that last one. We are awaiting the judgment like you are and everybody else. You've heard the President a number of times being consistent in his respect for due process, in his respect for the judiciary, and in his support and commitment to respecting the role of the courts in resolving matters of dispute, which is something that's well expressed and covered within our constitutional framework. And so we will be watching and listening and going through the judgment, as I'm sure all of you will be doing. There's nothing further that we can say about that imminent judgment. I don't want to assume that I have the same understanding as you are on the issues that have affected these ministers. So I'll try to do my best to be as open to you as much as possible. With respect to Minister Tolashe, the President is attending to the matter. The Minister has delivered her report to the President. articulating her side of the story with respect to the vehicles and other issues. As you know, the president prefers to take his time when he's dealing with such matters, and so he will not be under any form of pressure to arrive at whatever decision he may arrive at. But it's a matter that he's on top of, and he's aware of all the issues. And without speculating, I'm sure in the next couple of weeks or so, he will be meeting with the minister. You said, is the president worried about ministers that are facing public scrutiny? So with respect to Minister Malatsi, for example, I'm sure you're referring to the AI, the use of AI issue. The minister came forward and came out and issued a statement, and from what we understand is that the minister is addressing the matter, and the matter is being looked at internally in terms of internal controls, but also further investigations to ascertain what happened and what went wrong. And so there is a learning opportunity there. I don't think the public scrutiny as such is on the minister personally, but it's scrutiny that's being subjected to the entire department with respect to its own internal controls, as well as how it chooses to deploy AI tools. So that's where the issue is. Which other minister you mentioned? Minister Khwarube, you're referring to the publishing matter. So that matter has been referred to, from what I understand, the minister has referred it to National Treasury for further investigation to see if any procurement regulations were violated. And I'm sure once that investigation has been concluded, the necessary steps will then be followed. These sort of, especially procurement, as you know, we've been plagued by troubles and problems, all sorts of problems with respect to procurement. In fact, fairly soon, the president will be announcing an intervention of some sort with respect to procurement. If you look at what's coming out at the Madlanga Commission, issues of procurement are there. If you look at what came out of the Zondo Commission, again. So we've been plagued by all sorts of challenges with respect to procurement issues. And so I wouldn't characterize that issue as an issue that affects the minister unless you're saying the minister was directly involved in the procurement process, which is not the case. She was not. And so it's an issue that she's responded to fairly quickly that's impacting her department, and it's an issue that she must attend to, and she is attending to it. And so there's no concern on the side of the president in that respect. The concern is, despite everything else we've tried to do, despite the existence of the PFMA, we are still being plagued by these challenges with respect to procurement. As I said, sooner or later the president will be announcing an intervention that will hopefully, not hopefully, that will certainly assist us to get out of these issues. Ms. Tara?
Tara, Spokesperson. Vincent, the National Treasury recently sent a letter to Executive Mayor Zurita Marero, and in the letter, Minister Kodongwana said that he observed serious violations in terms of the PFMA, which he feels suggest deteriorations of the city's governance and overall financial health. Is the president aware of this letter that was sent to Mayor Marero, and has the presidential working group discussed this letter, or will it be discussed by the presidential working group?
So really the letter is not the issue. The issue is the substance of the letter, isn't it? And the substance of the letter is partly the reason why the president set up the presidential Johannesburg working group. It was not just a case of concerns around poor service delivery in other areas, but it was also a recognition that there may very well be areas where there are governance failures, and there may very well be areas that impact on the financial stability of the Johannesburg Metro, the city of Johannesburg. And so the president is aware of those issues, And yes, he is aware of the letter that National Treasury sent to the mayor. Yes, bro.
Mulilani from SABC. Just to go back to the issue of these protests, pockets of protests, as you refer to them, of the illegal immigrants as well as mother shops in townships. Is the president being briefed by crime intelligence whether the current protests could snowball out of control to an extent that we wake up tomorrow with similar scenes as that of the July 2021 unrest? Have we reached that point, or is it still comfortable that things are still under control? The second question, will the president be watching this judgment by the Constitutional Court? And the last one, linked to that, without speculating, if the Concord could find that Parliament acted irregularly in coming to that decision that the process should not go ahead, if indeed that process comes back to Parliament and Parliament resolves that the president must be investigated, would the president step aside while that process is unfolding, or will it continue in his duties? Thank you.
Mhlekazi, I think you missed your calling as a scenario planner. Be that as it may, look, you correctly, I flagged your questions as being speculative. So on your last question, I can't respond speculatively. Let's wait for the judgment. Let's see what the judgment says, and take it from there. It will be really difficult to say if this happens, this is what will happen, because then, we don't know what's going to happen. So let's rather avoid engaging on a speculative discussion. Even your first question is somewhat speculative, but let me put it this way to you. Is the president being briefed about security risks? The answer is yes. Is he aware of potential risks and the security situation? The answer is yes. He is aware. Post July 21, you will know that there was a review of our intelligence services, and the implementation of the recommendations that came out of that review is underway. At the same time, there's been a lot of work done to strengthen public order policing. I think, if I'm not mistaken, over the last 2-3 years, the South African Police Service has employed north of 10,000 new recruits, specifically to address shortages in public order policing arising from the July 21 experience. And so one will say we are, reasonably confident that we've done everything we can as a government to put in place measures to prevent the reoccurrence of what happened on the 21st of July and the subsequent days that followed. Are these protests being monitored by law enforcement? The answer is yes, they are. I think what is important is that in our narrative, in how we analyze and look at these issues, as I said earlier on, there are certain things, there's a trap that we must avoid. The first one is to avoid this blanket description of South Africa as being xenophobic. It is not, and you will know that. The other fact is we don't have a wholesale killing of foreign nationals. There were foreign nationals that were killed, I think, this past weekend or the other weekend in Johannesburg, and it was found that they were killed by other foreign nationals. And so you have an issue of crime, which is an issue that we are all well too familiar with in this country. And so we're going to have to be really careful in how we analyze these issues and we give them a proper characterization. Otherwise, we risk unfairly maligning the country in the same way as the country has been maligned over the so-called white genocide. So we need to avoid these lazy labels of incidents, because then they do a lot of damage towards the country. It's also the reason why President Chapo and President Ramaphosa yesterday in their discussion, they agreed that you cannot deal with immigration issues in isolation to the contributing factors that drive people to leave their countries of birth and go and seek refuge elsewhere. And that's something the continent needs to confront openly and quite frankly.
Celine Millington, SABC.
Yes.
I want to check if the presidency has any comment on the Operation Prosper, particularly in what's happening in the Western Cape, deployment of SANDF, how it's going, what the presidency thinks of how things have been unfolding, and also an MP was arrested yesterday, among others, on charges of defeating the ends of justice. Do you have any comment on that?
Let me rather not comment on that one, because that's what do you call it, legal due process, right? So let's rather not comment on that. People get arrested in South Africa on a daily basis, so we shouldn't treat other arrests as exceptional over others. Let me stay out of that one. On Operation Prosper, my understanding is that a briefing, a report is being prepared to give an update on progress and how that operation is unfolded. And I also understand that that report or parts of that report will be shared with yourselves as the media and the public. And so let me not preempt that process at this stage. It's been, a month or so since the deployment, and I guess depending how you look at it, one has to say you're dealing with very well entrenched criminal syndicates that are at play here, the majority of which are involved in some form of illicit crime. And so they are, or let me put it this way, you're not going to expect them to just, disappear away so quickly. If anything, you can expect some form of resistance, or you can expect them trying to find other creative ways to dodge law enforcement. And so we need to be cautious with the manner in which we judge this operation so early on, when it's an operation that has been committed for, I think, 12 months, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah. I want to go back to your first question. I've just remembered, because there was a first question you had asked, and I don't want to be accused of dodging questions. Look, one will understand the criticism, one will understand the concern when our president is being seen in a foreign country with people that are, as I've described them, persons of interest to our law enforcement. That will be understandable. But equally, I will beg you to appreciate the fact that the president was invited by his counterpart to Zimbabwe. He had no prior knowledge of who would be there. The meeting was arranged to be a very informal, relaxed sort of engagement, albeit over serious issues concerning the two countries. And so the president will have not had any prior sense of who will be there and who they are and so on. And when he was there, he still had no sense of who this person was until the report surfaced and we pointed out to him that, oh, by the way, this is now the issue. And that's why the message is quite important, that the president encourages our law enforcement agencies to vigorously pursue or continue to pursue the investigations that they've commenced against these individuals or individuals without any hesitation. So they shouldn't hesitate just because they've seen these pictures doing the rounds on social media that now they must not, or they must pull their foot off the pedal and they must not proceed with the investigations. They should, and do so with the independence that they have, that is embedded within our legal framework. So, but yeah, one will understand the criticism and one will appreciate the concerns. Am I standing in between your lunch hour? Or are there more questions? Oh, sorry. I might have some questions from our WhatsApp. Who's Nandi? Is Nandi here? Okay, Nandi, do you want to run through those questions, please?
Good afternoon, Mr. Magwenya, and the members of the media here this afternoon. I have 3 online questions. Francelo Mawaha Mashate from Progressive Independent News Agency asked, there is a speculation that the Japanese Prime Minister Takaishi Sanaida will soon be visiting South Africa. Is this true? And if it is, when is the visit expected? What is the main purpose of this visit and what core issues are likely to be discussed? Second one, good afternoon, Dr. Magwenya. Thank you for the opportunity. Writing from Network 24 here. I have one question. There have been multiple reports regarding a possible peace meeting at Ngandla between President and former President Jacob Zuma. When is this meeting expected to take place? And what will be the nature of this engagement? Thank you. And the last question, from Peter Fabricius. On the Zimbabwe visit, there have been considerable commentary in Zimbabwe that President Ramaphosa cautioned President Mnangagwa about the dangers of proceeding with his efforts to extend his term of office beyond what the present constitution allows. The commentary suggests our president is concerned this effort will spark instability on our doorstep. Was this President Ramaphosa's purpose? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nandi. Okay, let's start with the first one. Yesterday, the president received a courtesy call from the Japanese foreign minister. And maybe that could be the reason behind the speculation. But at this stage, insofar as our finalized international program, there is no amendment that has been made to accommodate a visit by the Japanese Prime Minister. But I'm quite certain that going into next year, that's something that both the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, as well as the Presidency, will look at quite favorably, considering the size, the ticket size of our trade with Japan, as well as the sort of strategic and historical relationship that South Africa has had with Japan. So, but insofar as this year is concerned, it's not in our international program, but it may very well be something that does happen early next year, which the president will be very warm to. Peace meeting at Ngandla. I don't know. I mean, why would you use the description peace meeting as if they've been at war? They've not been at war. It's a political. I suppose it could be both political, as well as the reality that former President Zuma is a former head of state. As a former head of state, he does have access to the sitting head of state, and if there are issues that he wishes to posit with the current head of state, he will be open to do so. And President Ramaphosa will be open to a discussion with any former head of state, whether it's President Mbeki or President Zuma or President Motlanthe. The president will be open to engaging any of them. They do see each other in various events. President Mbeki attends ANC, NEC meetings, and they will have a chat there. Similarly, recently the president was in Eswatini, and so former President Zuma, and they greeted very warmly. They had a bit of a chat. And so I don't see it as something that will necessarily be dubbed as a peace meeting. They've not been at war. Do they hold different political views? In a way, yes. Former President Zuma went on to form his own party. And so, yeah, but it won't be necessarily a peace meeting. It will be a question of a former head of state engaging with a sitting head of state over whatever issues he may have that are issues of concern or suggestions that he may have. But it's something that President Ramaphosa will be very open to. He will have no issue with meeting with former President Zuma. The Zim visit and the commentary, Peter, look, we've seen similar commentary. At this stage, I don't have an indication from the president that he wants us to Mnangagwa, and so I'm not at liberty to comment on what exactly they discussed, except to say they will have engaged quite deeply and quite thoroughly on issues of mutual and bilateral interest. And some of those issues will include developments in Zimbabwe, and some of those issues will also include developments in South Africa. One of the things the president does very well when he's meeting other heads of states is to update them on the developments in South Africa, the establishment of the GNU, the complexity of having to manage 10 parties, the pride of concluding an agreement amongst all 10 parties in such a short space of time when you compare with either more developed and advanced democracies that struggle to conclude such agreements in time following the elections. And so one will expect that all issues pertinent to developments in Zimbabwe would have been discussed. Equally, the president will have shared a thought or two or shared a perspective on recent developments here in South Africa. And that's something that heads of states do, and that discussion will always center around the strengthening of the bilateral cooperation, issues of trade, issues of security, how they vote at multilateral platforms, how they cooperate with respect to continental issues as well as global issues. So it will have been a very wide-ranging discussion, considering that they retreated to President Mnangagwa's farm. None of us there, officials, were there trying to say, time is up, we need to go to the next commitment. And so they will have had a lot of time to engage on a variety of issues, but I can't get into the actual details. I see you want another bite at the cherry. Or just because, before you do, are those the only questions that, okay, all right. I had a question from Karen Duplessis, which I think I've also addressed on the Zim issue, so, but she might reach out with the follow-up. Yes, my brother.
Hi, just to follow up with, we do also know that recently the DA has elected a new leader, which is told me that he did have a meeting with the president. Can you just comment on also, given now that there's a new leader within one party of the GNU, how does that sort of now affect the GNU also, and how did that meeting with the North go?
Yeah, no, they met. I think it was Mayor Hill Lewis who mentioned that. I can't remember the exact date, but it was at the back, immediately at the back of the conference, the DA conference. And so it was a good meeting. It was a good meeting that they had without going into any details. They're very familiar with one another. The President is also a resident of Cape Town, and they've been together in a number of public and government events here in Cape Town. The meeting was really to, I suppose, to sort of cement, the commitment to keeping or maintaining the stability of the GNU, and to also commit to further collaboration. At this stage, as you know, Mayor Hill Lewis has indicated he will not be joining cabinet. The President has regular engagements with the various ministers that were deployed from the DA. So in that regard, it was important for Mayor Hill Lewis and the President to establish a communication channel as GNU partners, as it does with all other parties as well. And so in that sense, it was a good meeting with respect to solidifying the commitment towards maintaining the stability of the GNU and further collaboration on a wide range of issues that may impact the GNU or that are of interest to the GNU. But it was a very positive meeting. And so there's not going to be, we don't anticipate on the side of the President, he doesn't anticipate an adverse sort of impact, if that's what your question is. How is it going to impact the GNU? It's not going to impact the GNU in any other way that will undermine the stability of the GNU, right? And you will have noticed that there is now a great deal of maturity across all parties with respect to how they engage with one another, with respect to how they collaborate. I think I shared with some of your colleagues, even though I'm not allowed to talk about what happens in Cabinet Lekgotla meetings, but I did, take the risk of being scolded by our DG, that one of the things I observed, particularly at this last Lekgotla that was held earlier this year, I observed ministers that were engaging as ministers of one government. I observed premiers from different parts of the country, from different organizations, who were engaging as part of one government. So there were moments where you will find certain ministers from the DA agreeing with ministers from the ANC on a particular issue, or with a premier that comes from an ANC-led province. And so since 2020, when was it, 2024? It feels like a long time. Since 2024 and the establishment of the GNU, there's been a great deal of maturity in how the different members of the GNU work with each other. And that was quite evident at that Lekgotla, that where there were disagreements, those disagreements were across the board. I definitely saw and experienced ministers, cabinet ministers, that were singing off the same hymn sheet, representing one government, and it was the same dynamic with the premiers that were present in that meeting. And so as things stand, the President is very comfortable that the GNU is stable and that the leadership changes that have taken place in the DA, if anything, they will strengthen that stability. Okay, lunchtime. Bulelani, it's lunchtime. Ne? Let's call it off. We'll end up discussing issues we shouldn't discuss, right? Colleagues. Sorry?
You don't want to be between us and
No. I know Cape Townians love their food, so I won't stand in between yourselves and your lunch. Colleagues, thank you very much. This is actually our first media briefing this year, and thank you for coming through, and it's been an enjoyable interaction. When am I hosting you?
When are you hosting us for lunch?
Oh, me? Oh, is lunch on me?
Yeah, lunch is on you.
Oh, dear. Okay. How many people do we have here? Does that include camera crews or not?
Yes, let them come.
There's a fish and chops place just behind the building. We can go there and have fish and chips. I love it. I love that place. Yeah, no, we can go. We can all go. But I know some people